Hello, I am Zakar, and in this video I will be discussing how the Declaration of Independence, which was written in 1776 with its promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, was not completely realized until the Civil War. By 1860, the nation was divided since the North saw declaration as equality for everyone, but the South focused more on states' rights and protecting slavery. Richard Norton Smith talks about how the nation was divided and how this led to secession.
Party, the Republicans, which were defined as being anti-slavery, but not radically anti-slavery. They were not abolitionist. They were all about containing the spread of slavery. And Lincoln won with just under 40% of the vote. And the sheer news of his election, as you say, led 7 southern states almost immediately to secede.
The White House that the First Lady inherited had been the domain of.
I will now discuss the Southern or Confederate viewpoint on the Civil War. The Confederacy argued that they were fighting against a tyrannical government, similar to how the colonists fought against the British. Professor Caroline Jenney will explain this viewpoint.
Literal sense, but not lost because it was wrong. But that's probably a good segue for Carrie.
Yeah, I tend to think about 5 tenets of the lost cause. And those are first and foremost that the Civil War was not about slavery, that it was a constitutional struggle over states' rights, that Confederate soldiers had fought honorably and bravely, that they had not lost, they had not been defeated on the battlefield, but turning to what the first panel this morning talked about, that they were simply overwhelmed by superior manpower, northern manpower and material. That the fourth tenet being that Lee and to some extent Jackson and others were nearly godlike figures. And finally, I would add that Southern women on the home front had been devoted, unquestionably devoted to the Confederate war effort throughout.
And to add one thing to your 5, what's the position of enslaved people in the lost cause?
Now I will discuss the Union viewpoint on the Civil War. President Abraham Lincoln mentioned the Declaration of Independence in his Gettysburg Address, where he said that the nation was dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He believed that the Union must be protected so that democracy could exist.
And I'll try. I think at a very basic level, I think these concepts are very tied together: union, loyalty, and sacrifice, patriotism, nationalism. But it meant loyal to your country, loyal to the country that was founded in the Revolutionary War and was established by the Constitution and followed through by George Washington. That's what Northerners thought, to keep the Union whole. And
180,000 black soldiers joined the fight for freedom for everyone. They were fighting to make the words in the Declaration about freedom and equality come true. Barbara Gannon will discuss this topic in more depth.
Beginning of the war, none of the white Northerners would have ever imagined that you would have had black Northern soldiers. In fact, they turned many, many patriotic Northern freemen away. So it was only the process of the war, i.e. the high death count, sickness, and the fact that it didn't go well, that prompted people to really think about arming African Americans. But of course it was essential.
I will now discuss the 13th Amendment and its connection to the Declaration of Independence. So, the Declaration was not a law, but once the 13th Amendment was passed, the Declaration's principle of freedom was finally put into the Constitution. This action made the Declaration's idea of freedom a law. Tevolia Glimpf, professor of history and African American studies at Duke University, will discuss the connection between the Declaration and the 13th Amendment in more detail.
Congress did finally come up with an amendment. No one was quite happy with the wording. It was revised several times until we got to the point where we got the one that we do have. But getting that amendment passed was very difficult, but very important.
And you make an important point that
I will now discuss the conclusion of this video. The Civil War was a test of the Declaration of Independence since the war ended slavery. However, the struggle for equality still continues today. As we celebrate 250 years of America, we see that the Declaration is not just a document, but a goal that we are still trying to get to. Thank you. I will now show the citations and end credits for this video. These are the citations, and here are the end credits. Right, this is the end of the video.